In this video, we'll study NATO, the most effective military organization of the previous 75 years. NATO ended the Cold Fight quietly, brought peace to the Balkans, and won the worldwide fight against terror. However, NATO's biggest triumph was showing Russia's vulnerability. NATO showed Russia that its actions have repercussions, despite its boasts. Thus, the alliance unwaveringly supported Ukraine, giving Russia a message: someone is stronger. The Ukraine war showed that Putin should dread a NATO conflict, not the other way around. Putin would commit political and military suicide by opposing NATO, according to one pundit. Please examine how NATO transformed the game. NATO's Ukraine war involvement. NATO has shown Putin the dangers of provoking the alliance by stopping Russia militarily, politically, and economically. Every Russian advance was countered with NATO's aid, significantly impacting Russia's plans. When Russia invaded Ukraine, Putin expected to conquer Kiev in days, underestimating both Ukraine and NATO. Kiev has stood strong, supported by NATO, even though Ukraine is not yet a NATO member. NATO's response included providing Ukraine with vital military aid like Iris-T air defense systems, Patriot missile defense systems, FIM-92, Stingerman manpads, Norwegian NASAMS, US-made M142 HIMARS, M270 multi-launch rockets, and M1 Abrams tanks. NATO also supplied German Leopard 2 tanks, UK-made M777 howitzers, French Caesar howitzers, and US-made FGM-148 Javelin anti-tank systems, among others. In 2024, Ukraine expects dozens of US-made F-16 jets from Denmark and the Netherlands, which may finally give it air superiority. Despite not receiving all requested U.S. weaponry, the U.S. has been the top military aid donor. NATO as a whole has ensured Ukraine's resistance, but concerns remain over future U.S. commitment if Donald Trump is re-elected. The NATO collective defense capacity. Many experts argue that Putin needs Trump to win, believing the alliance's strength could weaken if the U.S. pulls back. However, they're overlooking that NATO can function without the U.S. The alliance, which includes over 30 countries such as the UK, Germany, and France, remains a formidable force. The EU has provided the most aid to Ukraine, with the majority of the $92 billion in aid being financial support, while the U.S. has contributed over $70 billion in both military and financial assistance. NATO primarily handles non-lethal and humanitarian aid, but there have been growing calls for more military coordination since 2024. Article 5 of NATO's treaty guarantees mutual defense, reassuring Ukraine's partners that their security is not compromised by aiding Ukraine. This long-term commitment will help Ukraine transition from Soviet to NATO standards. Despite Russia's opposition, NATO expanded by admitting Finland and Sweden in 2023 and 2024, further encircling Russia. This expansion highlights NATO's strength and its stance on freedom and security. Ukraine's potential NATO membership, agreed upon in 2008, could be finalized once it meets specific requirements and resolves territorial disputes. This is crucial because Russia's aggression towards Ukraine stems from its fear of NATO's growth. NATO's open-door policy sends a strong message to Russia. If Ukraine joins NATO, Russia will be bordered by NATO countries, making it a much more significant challenge for Russia to fight the alliance. Putin's actions, ironically, have led to NATO's expansion, especially welcomed by the Baltic states, who view Russia's aggression as a direct threat. NATO backs the Baltics. NATO is firmly standing up to Russia's reckless behavior, ensuring that Europe is no longer at Russia's mercy. Regardless of the Ukraine war's outcome, NATO is committed to curbing Russia's aggression. In addition to supporting Ukraine, NATO is strengthening defenses in the Baltic states. NATO is deploying a permanent German-led brigade in Lithuania with 4,800 troops to secure the country's eastern flank. Canada is establishing a Latvian brigade, with 2,200 Canadian soldiers set to be permanently stationed by 2026, and Estonia will be supported by a UK NATO battalion. These forces will add to the 4,000 NATO troops already stationed in the region since the Russian invasion began. Additionally, 8 battle groups are deployed across Poland, Bulgaria, Hungary, Romania, and Slovakia, further fortifying NATO's eastern frontier. With nearly 500,000 Russian casualties in Ukraine and the Kremlin's desperate efforts to bolster its army with poorly trained recruits, Russia's military is severely weakened. NATO's strategy of deterrence and defense stands in stark contrast to Russia's brutal tactics, which often involve sending wave after wave of untrained soldiers to their deaths. In terms of active duty troops, NATO far surpasses Russia, with 3.39 million to Russia's 1.32 million. Several NATO countries are revisiting conscription, particularly in light of Russia's ongoing threats. Latvia, in response to the security risks, reinstated military service in 2023. NATO's military superiority in land, air, and naval forces gives it a significant edge over Russia in any potential conflict. NATO and Russian nukes. Nowhere is NATO and Russia more evenly matched than in nuclear weapons. By 2024, the globe had over 12,000 nuclear warheads. Only Russia has 5,500. The US, UK, and France have about the same amount of nuclear weapons in NATO. Naturally, the US owns 5,000 warheads, whereas the UK and France own 225 and 290. However, the issue is these opposing sides' nuclear ideology, not nuclear numbers. NATO uses nuclear weapons to deter conflict, not increase it. Russia is the most willing to employ nuclear threats in military strategy. Putin's biggest bargaining chip in Ukraine has been Russia's nuclear weapons and irresponsibility. In response to Western provocations, Putin openly announced tactical nuclear weapons drills in May 2024. He also hid an unknown quantity of nuclear weapons in Belarus, which borders Poland, Lithuania, and Latvia. How did NATO handle Russia's nuclear threat? Always sticking to its guns. NATO's nuclear deterrence doctrine worked during the Cold War and beyond, when nuclear warfare was most likely. Deterrence also requires storing nuclear weapons at secure European military locations. NATO members Belgium, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, and Turkey stockpile roughly 100 US-owned nuclear weapons as of 2023. This list may grow in 2024 as Poland has offered to host nuclear weapons if NATO reinforces its eastern border. Poland should react, and NATO should consider increasing its nuclear presence in the region as Russia delivered nuclear weapons to Poland via Belarus. NATO needed to prove its military dominance and isolate the country globally. Imposing penalties. Here come NATO's economic and information warfare methods. These strategies aim to degrade Russia's strategic position and deplete its military machine. Indeed, they did it. Since the invasion, Russia has had over $300 billion of its overseas assets blocked via economic warfare sanctions. Finance, oil, and defense have been hit hard by these sanctions, hurting Russia's military. The coordinated economic actions have also restricted Russian banks' access to international financial systems and embargoed major exports and imports. NATO isn't only responsible for this. Many other nations have also punished Russia. However, NATO's cooperation and leadership have helped garner international support and ensure broad and effective sanctions. The number of sanctions against Russian firms and people exceeded 16,500 in 2024. NATO countries have contributed heavily, with the US and Canada on top with 3,500 and 2,700 penalties. This shows how powerful NATO is when its members unite. This solidarity is why Russia will lose to NATO if it challenges it. NATO will spare no effort to protect its members, as the Ukraine war has proved. Consider that Ukraine isn't even a NATO member, so imagine what would happen if one was endangered. Let's compare NATO and Russia's military capability. Before we begin, realize that numbers aren't everything. Even if Russia is powerful in one area, quality always outweighs numbers. Russia has mostly relied on outdated equipment and infrastructure since the Soviet Union's demise, neglecting to invest in its military. Western sanctions have forced Russia to scour its supplies for old technology and eliminate maintenance and upgrades. However, NATO has modern equipment with cutting-edge technology and strict maintenance standards. The alliance's investment in stealth fighter jets and cybersecurity technologies keeps its forces ready for modern conflict. NATO versus Russia military comparison. Let's break down the military capabilities of NATO versus Russia. NATO outmatches Russia in nearly every relevant category, including active-duty personnel, reserves, and paramilitary forces. NATO boasts more than 3.4 million reservists, while Russia has only 2 million. In terms of paramilitary forces, NATO outnumbers Russia by over 500,000, with NATO's force exceeding 800,000 compared to Russia's 25,000. This significant gap is even more crucial now as NATO has demonstrated superior interoperability since the start of the Ukraine war. Before the war, Russia's military professionalism and mandatory conscription were key to its strength. However, NATO's cohesive, integrated approach to defense has proven more effective as the war progressed. Additionally, the invasion has driven military spending up on both sides. Russia's defense budget for 2024 has reached a record $140 billion, but this is still far behind NATO, whose European members alone outspend Russia by more than double, even without the U.S. NATO's strength is also reflected in its equipment. While Russia may have over 14,000 tanks by 2024, most are Soviet-era models, which have shown reliability issues. NATO, on the other hand, fields modern tanks like the German Leopard 2, British Challenger 2, and French Leclerc, giving it a clear advantage. This is also true for air and naval forces. NATO's air superiority is clear, with 4 to 5 times more aircraft than Russia, including advanced jets like the F-35 Lightning II. NATO also boasts 4 times as many ships, and its naval forces have shown more effectiveness, especially after Ukraine's brilliant tactics crippled Russia's Black Sea Fleet. Despite Putin's ambitions, it's clear that NATO has the upper hand in military power, making any confrontation with the alliance highly risky for Russia. Most experts believe NATO would ultimately prevail, ensuring Europe's security despite the ongoing war. Given the current position and Russia's advances, NATO may soon face direct conflict. Do you think NATO and Russia will soon go to war? Can NATO deter Russia? Discuss in the comments. If this video is helpful, like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more information and fun videos. Thanks for watching. See you next time.